You feel like you've seen every episode of The Waltons a million times. You know the characters, you know the stories, and you definitely know that iconic goodnight sequence by heart. But what if I told you that some of the show's most memorable scenes are hiding some pretty shocking mistakes that never got edited out? From actors staring right down the barrel of the camera to props that just seem to appear out of thin air, we're about to point out the unedited moments that made it into the final cut. So stick around, because we're revealing the bloopers you never knew you missed. The Waltons is more than a show, it's a television institution. For 9 seasons and a handful of movies, it brought the story of a family getting through the Great Depression and World War II in rural Virginia right into our living rooms. It was a show all about warmth, authenticity, and incredible storytelling. But just under that polished, homespun surface is a whole world of mistakes, goofs, and continuity errors that are just as fascinating as the stories themselves. You have to remember, in the world of 1970s TV production, things moved fast. With crazy demanding schedules and editing tech that was nothing like we have today, a few things were bound to slip through the cracks. They filmed an entire episode in about 6.5 days, a pace that left almost no time for reshoots or fixing little mistakes in post-production. The result is a layer of unintentional Easter eggs for eagle-eyed fans to find. Today, we're taking a closer look at what was really happening on Walton's Mountain. We'll look at moments where actors broke the fourth wall, where props and costumes seemed to follow their own rules, and when the reality of filming in the 70s crashed right into the 1930s setting. These aren't criticisms. Think of it as a celebration of the human touch behind one of the most beloved shows in TV history. The first rule of acting for the camera is pretty simple: never, ever look at it. The second you do, the illusion is shattered, and the audience is pulled right out of the story. But on a set with so many actors, especially kids, working for so many years, it was going to happen. And sometimes, those moments made it all the way to air. We showed it at the very start of the video, but it's worth a second look because it's one of the most obvious and funny mistakes in the whole series. The scene is from the season 2 episode, The Honeymoon. After all their years of marriage and raising kids, John and Olivia are finally getting a honeymoon. As they get ready to leave in the family truck, all the kids gather around to say their goodbyes. It's supposed to be a sweet, emotional moment, but David W. Harper, the young actor who played Jim Bob, seems to have missed his cue to get out of the shot. While John and Olivia are settled in the car, ready to go, Jim Bob is just standing there. He looks totally lost for a second. He glances around, and then his eyes dart right to the camera with a look of pure panic. You can practically read his mind. He mouths something that looks a lot like, "What? Oh," and then quickly scurries out of the frame, just a hair too late. It's a hilarious, human moment. You can just feel the panic of a kid realizing he's in the wrong place. On a modern TV set, that take would have been deleted instantly. But in the whirlwind production of The Waltons, this tiny, illusion-breaking slip-up was left in, a permanent and funny reminder of what it was like working with a big, young cast. If Jim Bob's mistake was a one-off, our next example was a regular habit from one of the show's best recurring characters. Marie Earle played Maud Gormley, the eccentric and often cranky elderly neighbor introduced in Season 4. Earle started her acting career later in life and brought this amazing, unforgettable energy to the role. She also brought a very peculiar habit that must have driven the editors nuts. It seems Marie Earle sometimes had trouble remembering her lines. To help herself keep up, she would often silently mouth the lines of the other actors in the scene with her. If you watch her scenes closely, you can see it. While another character is talking, Ma Gormley's lips will be moving right along with them. Judy Norton, who played Mary Ellen, confirmed this was a sweet quirk of the actress. The editors really did their best to hide it. A lot of the time, when another character was talking to Ma Gormley, the camera would cut away from her to avoid showing her mouthing the dialogue. But they couldn't always catch it. There are a few times you can clearly see her doing it, like a silent prompter for the whole scene. So why keep an actress who was such an editing challenge? The answer is simple: she was fantastic. Marie Earle's portrayal of Ma Gormley was so unique and loved that the production team was happy to work around her little eccentricity. Sometimes the break in reality isn't a look, but a simple slip of the tongue. In the Season 1 episode, The Sinner, the Waltons are trying to put out a barn fire. In the middle of all the chaos, Grandpa Zeb, played by the legendary Will Geer, is yelling out instructions. But in a moment of confusion, he doesn't call out to his granddaughter, Erin. Instead, he yells her real name, Mary Elizabeth. Mary Elizabeth McDonough, of course, was the actress who played Erin. This kind of mix-up is pretty common on sets, especially with a cast that becomes like a real family. The lines just blur. For Will Geer in that moment, he wasn't just working with another actor, he was calling out to Mary Elizabeth, the young woman he knew so well. It's a mistake that actually shows the deep, family-like bonds that formed behind the scenes. Not every potential blooper is a clear mistake. Some live in that interesting gray area between an actor's error and a character's choice. A great example is in the episode, The Love Story. The family is excited because John Boy's love interest, Jenny, is staying longer than expected. Amidst the happy chaos, Jason suddenly yells out, "See you in the morning." The camera then cuts to Richard Thomas as John Boy, who gives this sideways, slightly annoyed look. So, was this a blooper? Was Richard Thomas, the actor, breaking character because of an unexpected ad-lib? Or was he reacting as John Boy? Judy Norton has guessed it was probably the character, that John Boy, who was falling for Jenny, was a little annoyed at his family being so loud and excited about getting to spend more time with her. It's impossible to know for sure, but it feels just ambiguous enough that it could have been a mistake, a genuine moment of an actor being thrown off his game. Continuity is the invisible glue that holds a scene together. A character's costume, where a prop is sitting, the time on a clock. All these little details need to stay the same from one shot to the next. But on The Waltons, with its breakneck production schedule, that glue didn't always stick, leading to some of the most baffling and funny errors in the series. This might be the most famous continuity error in the show's entire history, a real head-scratcher that has made fans laugh for decades. It happens in the Season 4 episode, The Secret. The scene starts with young Elizabeth sitting outside with Jim Bob. She is very, very clearly wearing a bright red sweater. A moment later, she gets up and goes inside to talk to her mother and grandmother. But as she walks through the door into the kitchen, the red sweater is gone. She's just wearing her dress. No one mentions her taking it off, it's just vanished. The conversation inside goes on for a bit, and then Elizabeth walks back outside. And just as mysteriously as it disappeared, the red sweater is back on. There's no time jump. The scene is supposed to be continuous. So how does a sweater just vanish and reappear? The answer is all about how shows are filmed. Scenes are almost never shot in order. They probably filmed all the outside parts of this sequence on one day, and all the inside kitchen parts on another. Somewhere between those two shooting days, the script supervisor, whose whole job is to track these details, must have missed the note about the sweater. The result is a piece of clothing that seems to phase in and out of existence. In this one, Grandpa is heading to the hospital to pick up Grandma. As he leaves, he's wearing a dark-colored shirt under his overalls. We get a good, clear look at it. Later, he comes home with Grandma. The trip is shown as one single journey. But when he gets back to the house, his shirt has changed. He's now wearing a blue and white checkered shirt. Did Grandpa make a pit stop to change his shirt? Probably not. Just like Elizabeth's sweater, this is a classic continuity error. From filming different parts of a scene at different times. The scenes of him leaving and returning were likely shot on separate days, and nobody noticed Will Geer was wearing a different shirt. Later, John Boy is at the teacher's desk. In the first wide shot, the desk is pretty tidy, and that copy of Tom Sawyer is nowhere to be seen. The camera cuts away to Elizabeth for a second, and when it cuts back to a close-up of John Boy, the Tom Sawyer book has magically appeared on the desk right next to his arm. Not only that, but other things on the desk have moved around, and a pencil has also popped into existence. This just shows that the different camera angles were filmed in separate takes, and during the break, someone moved the props and added the book for the close-up. The list just goes on. One fan pointed out a moment where John Walton is wearing a hat, which vanishes mid-scene without him ever touching it. In another, Olivia places a pie on the windowsill to cool, only for it to be completely gone in the very next shot. In the Season 9 episode, The Hostage, there's a strange architectural error. When Octavia Baldwin opens the hidden door to the recipe room, a shot from the foyer shows the door has no molding on top. But when the camera cuts to a view from inside the room looking out, the door suddenly has a thick piece of molding along the top. And maybe one of the most undeniable mistakes involves a car. In The Search, John borrows a car to look for Olivia. In the wide shots, the license plate is 452,678. But later, in a close-up, the plate has changed to 84 to 6,209. They clearly used two different cars, a mistake that completely breaks the reality of the moment. When you're creating a show that runs for 9 seasons and multiple movies, with dozens of different writers, it's almost guaranteed that some details about the characters and their backstories will get mixed up. And for all its great storytelling, The Waltons was no exception. Let's start with the family pet, Reckless. For most of the show, Reckless is always called a he. John Boy and everyone else refers to the dog as male. He's a good boy. Then, in a later episode, something impossible happens. Reckless is pregnant. Fans were totally confused. How could a male dog suddenly be expecting puppies? The truth is a lot more practical, and a little bit sad. The original dog who played Reckless was, in fact, a male. But that dog passed away during the show's run. The trainers brought in a new, very similar-looking dog to replace him. The only problem? The new dog was a female. Instead of trying to explain a new dog, the writers just went with it, hoping no one would notice. But when a storyline came up where they needed Reckless to have puppies, they had no choice but to ignore years of continuity and have the now female Reckless become a mother. It's a huge plot hole, but it's also a fascinating peek behind the curtain at how real-world problems can force writers to make some pretty weird changes to a story. In the Season 3 episode, The Runaway, Jim Bob's birth date is specifically mentioned as June 13, 1924. It's a concrete fact. But then, just one season later, in the Season 4 episode, The Secret, the family is looking at his birth records, and his birthday is listed as January 13, 1923. Not only did the day and month change, but the year shifted, making him over a year older. It's just a classic case of a busy writer's room losing track of the small details. This same kind of thing happened a lot in the reunion movies made years later. Take the backstory of Jonasy's car. In the Season 9 episode, The Whirlwind, Jonesy tells the family he bought his car in San Francisco. It's a clear line of dialogue, but fast forward to the movie Mother's Day on Walton's Mountain. Jonesy tells the story of his car again, but this time, he says he bought it at Harry's Used Cars in Deadeye Gulch, Nevada. The switch from a major city to a fictional used car lot in another state is a huge inconsistency. It just shows how, over time, the little threads of a character's history can get completely tangled. One of the biggest timeline contradictions involves the very foundation of the family, John and Olivia's marriage. In the Season 6 episode, The Anniversary, which is set in 1940, John and Olivia celebrate their 25th wedding anniversary. Simple math tells you that if they were married for 25 years in 1940, they must have gotten married in 1915. This became the established date, but then came the movie A Walton's Easter, set in 1969. In the film, the family gathers to celebrate John and Olivia's 40th wedding anniversary. The problem is, the math is all wrong. If they married in 1915, their anniversary in 1969 would have been their 54th, not their 40th. For it to be their 40th, they would have had to get married in 1929. That's a massive, 14-year difference that completely changes the history of the show's main couple. Sometimes, the show didn't just contradict its own details, but the word of its all-knowing narrator. At the end of every episode, the adult John Boy, voiced by creator Earl Hamner Jr., would tell us what happened to the guest characters. In the Season 1 episode, The Literary Man, a writer named A.J. Covington befriends John Boy. At the end, the narrator states very clearly that they never saw or heard from A.J. Covington again. Case closed, right? Nope. In the Season 4 episode, The Abdication, guess who shows up again on Walton's Mountain? A.J. Covington himself. His return completely contradicts the narrator's final word from 3 seasons earlier. It was a clear oversight where the writers either forgot or just decided to ignore their own narrator to bring a character back. Setting a show in the 1930s and 40s means paying incredible attention to detail. But The Waltons was made in the 1970s, and every now and then, the modern world would bleed through, creating some funny historical goofs. Walton's Mountain was supposed to be a quiet, secluded place, but the show was actually filmed on the Warner Brothers backlet in Burbank, California, a very busy, modern area. No matter how hard they tried, the sound crew couldn't always filter out the noise. In so many scenes set in the supposedly peaceful Virginia countryside, you can clearly hear 1970s traffic from nearby highways. Even more jarring is the constant sound of airplanes flying overhead from the nearby Burbank airport. This was such a regular problem that the cast used to joke about it. In one take, a plane flew over during a scene, and actor Ralph Waite ad-libbed, "Or we could catch this jet." While that line was cut, the sound of the jets often wasn't. The goofs weren't just sounds. Sometimes you could see them, too. For example, in the Season 5 episode, The Heartbreaker, Grandpa is looking at packets of flower seeds with Elizabeth. If you look closely, you can clearly see modern UPC barcodes on the back. Barcodes weren't used commercially until 1974, about 40 years after the scene was supposed to take place. In another episode, Ike Godsey is in the hospital wearing a plastic patient ID bracelet, which is standard today but wasn't used back then. And in an episode set in 1933, Elizabeth plays with a Raggedy Ann doll that was made in the late 1960s. It wasn't just stuff, it was the way people looked and talked. Especially in the later seasons, the characters' hairstyles started to look suspiciously like they belonged in the 1970s, not the 1940s. All that feathered hair on the women and the long sideburns on the men were very much a product of when the show was made. Also, characters often used the word teenager, which didn't really become common until after World War II. It's these little details that show the 1970s perspective sneaking in. This last category of bloopers is maybe the most fun to spot. The accidental appearance of the film crew and their equipment. You know that big microphone on a long stick they use to get dialogue? It's called a boom mic, and it loved to pop into shots on the Waltons. In one Season 9 episode, as the family is packing a car, a whole cluster of boom mics dips into view right above Mary Ellen and Jason's heads. In another, a character is washing her hair outside, and you can see the microphone pack hidden under her top. Sometimes it wasn't just equipment, but the crew themselves. In a Season 6 episode, you can see a crew member hiding behind a stack of drawers at the mill. In another, John Boy and Grandpa are driving in the truck, and if you look through the back window, you can see a guy in a bright red shirt riding along in the truck bed. And in one of the funniest examples, a close-up on John's face shows a trail of cigarette smoke drifting into the frame. Nobody in the scene is smoking.